Thank you. All right. Um, welcome to the Montana Performing Arts Consortium's first workshop in our Connect and Learn Lab series. My name is Emily Wolfram, and I'm the executive director. And I am with, if you've joined us through a link in an email or somebody shared this with you, just so you know, the Montana Performing Arts Consortium, which we call MPAC for short, is a network of performing arts professionals who work together to strengthen access to transformative live performances all over the state of Montana. And our members are folks like performing arts organizations from throughout the state, service organizations that serve our field, as well as professional artists and agents and managers, and also affiliate organizations like schools and libraries and symphonies and any other nonprofit that incorporates live performance into their programs. And again, I'm pleased to welcome you to this first workshop in our series. This lab is it's a set of year-round professional development sessions that are designed to support artists and nonprofit leaders through both skill building workshops and peer connection. So stay tuned for more on that. Just so we know for this workshop, before we get started, um, you will have, if you're on your browser, you'll have various controls that you'll see either at the bottom or the top of your screen, depending on how it's set up. Do stay on mute unless you are coming off mute to ask a question. You can use the chat to ask a question. I'll keep an eye on that. You can also raise your hand. And I've got on the screen here just a few of those menu options for you to so you can engage with us and also just use Zoom in a way that works for you. There's also closed captioning enabled. And so I'm going to hand this off to Shelby, and there are more workshops that I'd like to share with you at the end of this session. So please stay tuned for that. But without further ado, I would like to continue on and introduce Shelby Rogala, the Assistant Director of the Montana Nonprofit Association for the storytelling workshop. The Montana Nonprofit Association has been a really useful resource for myself and for MPAC. And I'm sure you'll get a lot out of this. And if you have any questions about, about M&A, the Montana Nonprofit Association, let me know. If you are a member of MPAC and you are interested in becoming a member of M&A, talk to me because we actually have a way to make that available to you through your MPAC membership. But without further ado, I'd like to hand it off to Shelby.
Excellent. Thanks, Emily. And thanks all for being here. It's nice to see you. Nice to see you in the chat. And thanks, Emily, for sharing the screen of like Zoom how-tos. I screenshotted it and I'm like, we might steal this from Emily because it was so well. My name is Shelby. I'm with Montana Nonprofit Association. I see some familiar faces. Hey, Benji with Laverna, and I'm trying to think if I have met anyone else and some new faces. So thanks everyone for being here. We'll get started in just a minute. I'm going to ask you one other question, and maybe we'll just do a hand raise. So you can either raise your actual hand if you're on screen, or you can use the hand raise function or one of the emojis. So hand raise if you are joining as a staff member for an arts organization. Okay, 2. And then raise your hand if you're joining as a board member for an arts organization. Trish, awesome. Raise your hand if you are a performer. Lovely. And let's see, Kathy, perhaps I haven't seen your hand raised. Tell me about what your role is.
I don't know how to classify myself. We are the audio company for Two Valley Stage. So volunteer, I guess, would be where I fit, because I'm not really one of the board people, but we do an awful lot of work as the audio team. So volunteer, I guess.
Volunteer. Perfect. Wonderful. Thanks, Kathy. Cool. That's really helpful. And because we're a nice small group, I know there will be folks watching this recording, so we'll do our best to like talk to you live and make sure that we're giving folks that are watching the recording time and space to interact as well. But I think we'll be able to kind of like come off mute and share. A big part of storytelling, as you all know, that our performers and do this professionally, is practicing it. So we are gonna invite you to maybe come off mute and practice a little bit of a story. Maybe I'll put you in some breakout rooms. We'll just kind of see how it goes. So I do hope we get some practice in today. We won't have a ton of time because we have 90 minutes here, but at least a couple times I'd love to have folks share and practice. The other piece of this is getting it so that you can tell other volunteers, staff members, board members, help set them up for success. So many of you may be expert storytellers already. Consider this your train the trainer. If you are not yet an expert storyteller, or you're operating in a small community or a large community and you're like, we need more people to help put on these beautiful productions, this is your ability to kind of build those skills to feel comfortable bringing in who you need. And that might be volunteers, it might be donors, it might be board members, it might be some other very technical type of expertise that you need as performing arts centers across the Northwest. I'm going to go ahead and share two things in the slides. You should see a link for a worksheet, and Emily will make sure these go out in the post materials to a worksheet that'll just, it's like some opportunity for you to jot down as we're thinking. You don't have to use the worksheet. If you want to download that document so you have your own copy, that would be great. And then a link to the slides, just so you know that you have those if you need them. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen now. Give me a thumbs up if you saw the links in the chat and were able to open them, at least the worksheet. Excellent. And then give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Whew. Fingers crossed, this is the best tech start I've had in a while. Okay. Thank you for hanging in there. Okay, let's jump in. So we are talking about storytelling, and really for storytelling for fundraising and collaboration. We are not a performing arts center here with Montana Nonprofit Association. We are in fact an association of nonprofit leaders, organizations across the state of Montana. We exist to provide nonprofits with tools, resources, advocacy and policy support, opportunities to connect and network, to support all of the less fun parts of your organization, like financial leadership and volunteer recruitment and board governance and HR and fundraising, so that you all, as experts in your respective fields of performing arts of various kinds, can really focus on that. So we do that for all of our members and also non-members across the state. And excited to be joined from some folks, it looks like from Washington as well, and NYC here today. We do serve primarily C3 organizations. So a lot of the resources that we're going to talk about and kind of the frame that we approach this work is for 501c3 charitable nonprofit organizations. Those are organizations that have and are required to have a board of directors. They are tax deductible nonprofits, so you can make donations without paying taxes, and those nonprofits themselves do not need to pay certain taxes. So if you are a performer or coming at it from that angle, I think a lot of the skills and what we're going to talk about from the storytelling side of things still applies, but there's probably some really specific lenses that are built for nonprofit organizations. A lot of the work that we train on and offer resources around are based on these principles and practices of nonprofit excellence, which are 25-year-old documents that get updated every 5 to 8 years. And they cover all of those areas of nonprofit management and fundamentals that folks running C3 organizations need. So today we're going to talk a little bit about your needs and your community, talk through briefly fundraising and friend-raising cycles. And friend-raising is the dumb jargony word for recruiting volunteers and people that want to come be a part of the work that you're doing. We'll talk about storytelling components and then kind of jump into next steps. My background, in addition to being the Associate Director for Montana Nonprofit Association and being here for the last 8 years, I spent a lot of time in board governance, trainings, workshops, certifications, but my real background is education and adult education specifically. So I love some learning objectives and some outcomes. So we're focusing today on, as I mentioned, understanding the fundraising cycle. I hope you're able to learn how storytelling fits into the broader fundraising and awareness raising strategies. You'll be able to craft some compelling stories, we'll have some time to practice and refine, and hopefully you'll be able to leave this workshop feeling ready to like give it, right? It's not going to be rocket science. It's going to be something we want you to share. And you can share the recording, you can share the slides, you can share the workshop, whatever helps you help your volunteers and board, get going. And slides and worksheet are again linked here. Okay, so those are all my goals. That's a little bit about me. I'm excited to be here. You all shared kind of briefly, like you're here to refine your stories. You're here to better understand, how can we invite folks into our organization. But I'm just want to take a pause and see, is there anything that would make the next 1.5 hours a success for you? Or do you have any questions that are top of mind for you around collaboration, fundraising, and storytelling? So I'll pause. Feel free, you can chat them in or you can come off mute and share them in.
Hi, this is Emily. I just thought of something. I know I'm the person who put this on, but this was sort of interesting to think about because I'm looking forward to being thinking about, I guess, if I'm applying it to MPAC, like the story of my organization and thinking about it in a way that's like different and exciting to me. So that way, when I tell it to the next person I talk to, I can be like genuinely excited and hyped to sort of retell the story. I mean, I tell the story of MPAC all the time, but sometimes there are these little nuances that come through when I attend things like this that I'm excited to share with someone else, which is, part of the fun of storytelling.
Yeah, I love that, Emily. I think what I'm hearing there is a hope to feel like a little re-energized to tell this story that we tell a lot. And I think we all feel that working in nonprofit work or community raising or organizing work. You're like, I've told too many people, they don't want to hear it from me anymore. I am bored of hearing my own elevator pitch. And right, that like folks can tell if we're like kind of phoning it in. And so hopefully we have a little bit of a exercise or structure to play with that a little bit. Cool. Well, feel free. This was your last time to contribute. I'm not going to take any other questions or comments through the rest of the thing. So, good luck. Just kidding. If anything comes up, like feel free to raise your hand, chat in a question, whatever you need. But we're going to go ahead and get going. I will share a little background about this curriculum, which is that over the past 5 years, so over the past 10 years, nonprofit organizations across the state of Montana have noticed like a tough time recruiting volunteers, right? Our population demographics are changing, economic circumstances are changing. People are finding that there's like the same 10 people leading work in communities, whether you're here in Helena or in Ekalaka or up in Polson. Folks they get kind of burnt out, and then they kind of fall away, which means there's this core group that's doing a lot. And we're trying to reach beyond that core group, whether you're running a food bank or a festival or a performing arts center. How do we reach beyond? We're also seeing that folks have a lack sometimes of communication infrastructure. So the newspapers, local newspapers, and sources of information that worked really well 20 years ago are dropped off, right? So I don't know what it looks like in Washington and NYC. Here in Montana, like the amount of local newspapers has cut in half, I think, which means that all of those ways that we used to tell our story in like tidbits consistently have fallen off. So we're relying on social media, we're relying on posters at the coffee shop, we're relying on word of mouth to share just general information about our organization, let alone some of those stories that used to just get picked up and told. So, and we are facing post-COVID, and in this last year specifically, like a lot of tumultuous fundraising environments, right? We may not have received federal funding cuts, although some of your organizations may have, but you're certainly probably also looking at competition from local funders or regional funders in other ways. So we have a lot of these forces that are like making it harder to do the really important work we do. And there is a bright side. We have here in Montana, more folks moving into the state that want to be involved and engaged. I'm sure it's a similar situation in Washington as well. We have people that post-COVID are like ready to get back out. Community is like this word you can't, walk down the street without seeing written somewhere, like, we need to be in the community, we need to be engaged. People are really hungry to re-engage as citizens in a lot of ways. And so there's some momentum there that I think organizations can take advantage of. And I think there is a spirit of generosity from most folks around how do we make sure our communities are livable, enjoyable, have a high quality of life, and showcase the things and that we're excited about. So there are some pressures that come from this, that this curriculum has been built from, and there are some real opportunities that it hopes to address, which is finding people that want to support you or already support you and bringing them into the fold more continuously. In the fall, we're going to talk a little bit more about like the recruitment aspect of this. So like once you get somebody in, how do you build them as a volunteer? How do you build resources for them? Today, we're really just focused on like, how do we tell our story so people know us and are maybe interested to taking that next step. So I think this is question number 1. I've got to pull up one more thing. I think this is question number 1 on your handouts. But I want you to take just 60 seconds to like reflect, jot down, write on the little handout. What does your community, sorry for the poor wording there, what does your community already know about your organization? If I asked 10 strangers about your organization, what would they know? Would they understand how and why they could get involved? Would they be able to tell me why your work matters in this community? And if you're a performer, substitute performing company or whatever language makes sense for your organization. So take 60 seconds and just kind of reflect. What do people already know? What don't they know? Oops, sorry, that was good enough. Okay. So hopefully you have some thoughts, like what is it that they already know? What is it that you may be surprised or you think they know? I think as we move forward, thinking about whether you are facing a lack of information or misinformation about your organization can be really helpful. My guess for most performing arts center is that you're facing a lack of information, right? There may not be like misinformation being shared. Although in some rural communities, I'm from Darby, Montana originally, so I get to say this. In some rural communities, you'd be surprised what misinformation pops up through like small town channels, right? But be kind of thinking, are the stories that we're telling and inviting our board members and our volunteers to tell to just share and invite people in as maybe one more time that they hear about our organization and become familiar with it and the people behind it? Or is there something that we really need to start helping people understand or correct in their understanding of our work? Anyone want to share just like a quick reflection on what folks already know about the work that you do or what came up for you?
I'll share. You know, it's kind of hard to gauge. I think there is a faction of people in our valley. So we are the whole Swan Valley, Condon to Cedar Lake, clear down to Potomac. So there's like this huge. So people connected with the schools seem to, like the parents would know kind of what we do, bring in the music into the schools. And you know, so the people that are kind of connected to it and actively come to the concerts, the community concerts, they all kind of know what we do, but I don't know if I just picked out some random people that don't know, like Dan and I. So a lot of people know who who we are in this community. But it's kind of like this split, I think. So, but our director, Jenny Rohr, usually does a really good job at getting things in the paper and getting the word out. But it's kind of split, I guess.
Yeah. Kathy, I'd invite you to think about either of those audiences today. Think about, is it most important for us to kind of build the understanding that folks already connected to us have? Or do I want to think about how can we
definitely broaden.
So perfect. So I think as we move through, think about that lens of like,
Yeah.
I want more of those 10 strangers not associated with school or already in our circle to like get an introduction to them.
Right.
Thanks. Trish, you had also come off mute.
Yeah, we, I think, face the same thing that Swan Valley does. Part of it is that we have a huge influx of population during the summer, and we don't do concerts during the summer. So if you talk about strangers, we'd have to talk about asking strangers that are here during the winter. And I would say a 1 in 10 know about Mission Valley Live, even if they have the strangers have been living in the town for the last 5 years. When they find out about this, it's, I never knew anything about this. I mean, we have posters everywhere. We are on the radio. We have articles in the paper. We advertise in the advertiser paper that goes out every week. We put banners across 93. We are in the schools. We do everything we can possibly think of. We have brochures that are distributed. We have outlets for the tickets. We have an online presence. We have Facebook and Instagram and our website. And we advertise through the chamber, both in Ronan and Polson. And we still have that kind of response. So, yeah, how can we tell our story and really get it to resonate and people pay attention?
Trish, that's great. Two things. One, that was a great future Connect and Learn Lab, Emily, is Trish on marketing techniques for rural or small town arts organizations, because that was an incredible list, really comprehensive. Two, I think when we think about this 10 stranger, we're never going to get to 10 out of 10. No organization will, unless, and probably in Montana, no organization will, right? It's such a broad and vast state. It's hard to get to 10 out of 10. So we do want to right size, like, okay, we would want 2 to know exactly what we do. We'd want 3 to have an idea. And maybe we get to 5 out of 10. And that's sort of, obviously we're not going to measure this in an effective way, but really thinking through what would success look like for us? And maybe it's 5 out of 10 have a rough idea of it, or could say, oh, I saw a banner about that. But as we're thinking in the community, folks are busy. We live in this information overload space. And so sometimes that individual storytelling connection our board members are doing can help connect this idea they've seen right out in the world to like, oh, this is my community that leads this. These are my neighbors that are doing this work. And so this will kind of really try to bridge that gap there. Okay. So I've said this before, but it's on the slide, so I'm going to read it again because I think it's important. Board members and volunteers, to this point, Trish, you can have all of the marketing strategies, and we still need this like army, this cohort of ambassadors to support fundraising and fundraising efforts by telling stories and acting as ambassadors. We need those face-to-face folks. And they need practice. So we, again, often think like, well, they do it. They've been doing it for 5 years. They're passionate about it. They should just be able to talk about it. But a lot of things get in the way. And a lot of things shift, I guess, how well we're effectively able to tell those stories. So I'm actually going to skip forward a minute and think through, like, as we're thinking about how to better tell our story and how to train our board members, volunteers, how to better tell their stories. What keeps us from sharing stories about our organizations or projects? Where we won't do this on the worksheet, but what we hear a lot is lack of knowledge, fear of not getting it right, embarrassment. People don't want to brag or appear needy, or maybe they've said it 7,000 times and they're like, they've certainly heard this from me before. I don't need to say it again. Lack of practice or being asked. So these are big reasons, like big barriers to why we're not already all as volunteers, as staff members, as board members out in the community, like bringing people in, telling our story in an effective way. These are some of the barriers that we've seen. So in order to address these and maybe others that you might reflect on with your board, this would be a great question to ask on the worksheet is like, what's keeping us from it? A lot of board members answer, I don't want to say it wrong. If we serve 300 people per concert and I say 250, oh no, like I don't want to get it wrong, right? Or they're afraid of fundraising in general and they're like, I could never ask somebody for money. So I don't want to start to tell our story because then you're going to make me ask them for $50 on the spot and then they're not going to give it to me, right? So there are some of these misconceptions our board members have, and there are these fears of not getting it right. And underneath all of that is this lack of practice. So what we hope is to address these barriers through some more sort of intentional work. So I want to ask we'll take another 60 seconds. And this is all just to get to like, as we're starting to tell the story and they can ask after the story, are we refining that to what is most helpful for your organization right now? So this is question 2 on your worksheet. I'm going to give you 90 seconds. What would help your organization or project the most right now? Is it awareness, clients, attendees, participants? Kathy mentioned like broadening the awareness. Is it support? Do you really need time, money, board members? Like you're like, we have attendees, we need people to help run this organization. Or is it partnerships? Are you at a point organizationally where you're like, we need to collaborate more in our community because there's a lot happening and we want to make sure we're amplifying and working together versus maybe feeling competitive with one another. So take 90 seconds and think through what is going to help your organization most right now. You're not gonna like it, but I'm gonna ask you to like, you're like, all three, Shelby, duh. Pick one, pick like the most important one that you couldn't do the others if you don't have this one. Okay. I'm gonna ask you guys to chat those in. So you don't need to come off mute, just chat in awareness, support, or partnership. And all of you resist the urge to say all three, because I know it's all three, but what is your priority? And what do you want your board and your other volunteers to know is your priority? Awareness. Nice, Kathy. And Taneki. Let me know if I'm pronouncing that.
It's Tinica.
Tinaka. Thank you, Tinaka. That's beautiful. Cool. Awareness coming in strong. Ashley looking at partnership. Ashley and Bowen considering partnership. With okay, so kind of a split of that awareness and partnership. That's great to know. As we move through, keep that in mind, and Heather, partnership as well. Keep that in mind. Awareness, Perfect, that would increase, yeah, so that broad base, like participant awareness, attendee awareness. Okay, so keep those pieces in mind. I know it's hard to choose, but for your board and the army of volunteers you're going to train to tell your story, helping them understand what's the highest priority is going to be really great for them when it comes to like the follow-up from what they share in that story, right? Because sharing a story is great, but it's really what comes after, the connection that's made after, that will help build that foundation for your organization. And for them to have this clarity of like, we need to get more audience members, like we need to get people excited to attend, let's work on that. Or we want to find more ways to partner, so let's keep our ears open and start conversations around what it is we're looking for in a partnership. Okay, so let's see, we're gonna spend just a minute, since none of you said support, like donors or volunteers, we're gonna still go through this really briefly.
Can I just interject though? When I'm saying awareness, I'm including volunteers in that.
Okay, so awareness for volunteers about
Volunteers and audience members. That's kind of how I lumped that together. So
okay. Perfect. Thanks, Kathy. That's helpful. Okay, so what is an awareness building cycle? Where are we finding volunteers, donors, and board members? And how do we get them? I'm going to skip a couple of these slides so we can just get to like some of the more practice piece. And apparently the slides have been broken, but at the baseline, if we're thinking about what goes into, I'm so sorry that these slides are broken. Wow, that's really throwing me. When we think about what fundraising and friendraising looks like for board members, I think that this is a really helpful baseline. Often if we say, hey, board members and volunteers, we want you to go out and tell your story so that we can raise awareness, so we can have more attendees and potential donors. And they think, I don't want to ask anyone for money. That's terrifying. Thinking about what fundraising actually looks like and entails can be really helpful. These are estimates, right, of what the fundraising cycle looks like. But there's identification, who is out there, who wants to support our organization as a donor or as a volunteer. That identification process looks like sharing stories, building donor lists, asking questions, sharing networks. And then there's cultivation, and cultivation is a fancy fundraising word for relationship development. If you want somebody to be a supporter of your organization with their time or with their money, they need to develop a relationship with your organization. You do that through sharing stories, building relationships, spending time with donors or potential volunteers, asking questions, and having, this is a fundraising practice of 7 touch points between asks. The same could be said for volunteers, right? Having touch points between asks of time or money increases the like actual authenticity of the relationship you're developing. There's the small part, the 5%, the scariest part that we spend all of our time worrying about, which is actually saying, could you help us tear down at the next festival because we are tired and we need more volunteers? Or could you become a monthly donor? That's the smallest part of the fundraising cycle. And then there's stewardship, which is again, a fancy fundraising word for saying thank you, sharing stories, asking questions, saying thanks. What was your experience? If we think about this as the friend-raising cycle, meaning how are we building awareness about our organization? How are we getting out there? Again, we think we get afraid of this 5% of the time where we actually have to make the ask. As board members, to know when we ask you to participate as fundraisers or friend raisers or awareness builders, we're not asking you to walk up to strangers and say, hey, could I have some money? Hey, you know, come volunteer for 12 hours at our festival. That's not the ask. The ask is, let's build connections, let's tell stories, let's plant seeds across our community for folks to come back. So being able to talk to them at that level, whether you're looking for partnership or awareness, can be a nice way to just demystify what are we asking for when we're asking our board members and our community members, our volunteers to go out and tell the story. So if that's our goal, is to build relationships, tell better stories. How do we do it? Let's get into it. When we think about what makes a good story, we like to use this, you know, what makes a good story? A boring story explains or tells what an organization does. We've all heard it. All of us have met somebody and they've given us their like, we sell widgets are purple, our purple widgets are very nice. And it's like, this is a script and I do not care about these widgets very much, right? It's telling what the organization does. A fine story shows impact. It's like, our widgets, what could a widget do? Our widgets connect paper to one another so that you never walk into a room with unconnected paper. Our widgets are staplers. And this is a big impact, right? That's cool. I might lean in a little bit more, but a really interesting story demonstrates what is possible because of the work or what problem the organization solves. So we're always pushing like, what is really happening because of the work that your organization does? And the second element of a good story is the answer to this question, which is, who does the person you're talking to care most about in the moment that you're telling them, besides themselves? Who do they care most about when you're telling somebody a story besides themselves? It's kind of a trick question. Any thoughts? My colleague, when she does this, really likes to say Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is who everyone cares about the most at that moment. Family, that's a good one, Kathy. It's you. The person you're talking to, in fact, cares about you. And we're all very uncomfortable, except for the performers in the room, perhaps. We're all very uncomfortable with being like, they care about us the most, but they certainly do, and they certainly should, because they are in an active conversation with you. You have their attention. You are the human being in front of them that has just asked them a question about who they are. You are the human being in front of them talking about something you're excited about. So front of their minds are themselves, perhaps their family. But the next most important person or interesting person to them in that moment is you, which means that a great story doesn't just show impact, it doesn't just tell what the organization does, but it is shared from the unique perspective of the teller and invites the listener to see how they benefit from, are part of, or see themselves in the work of the organization. I'll pause and say that again, not all of it. It is shared from the unique perspective of the teller, because the person you're talking to cares about you. They can't care about the organization abstractly or conceptually until they're engaged in a conversation with you. You can use that interest as a bridge to talk about the organization, which is probably more comfortable for many of us. But if we skip and kind of throw us out of the conversation at all, then they're never going to connect to us, which is going to make it pretty hard to connect to the organization. Just to like, prove my point a little more. 2 stories, right? We have a good story. Our local festival brings our community together to celebrate the natural beauty surrounding our town and provide a family-friendly event for locals and tourists. We bring in world-class performers to our main street every Friday in the summer. We need to raise funds to support the performers, vendors, and cover insurance. Cool. Yeah, that's interesting. Who's playing? What's going on? I'd be like curious, right? Or I started volunteering for this festival 5 years ago when my kids entered high school. I wanted them to see the unique parts of our town and be proud of where they come from. Since then, I've stepped onto the board. We are all volunteers. Did you know that? It's wild. And we have been able to help. I've been able to help select performers, raise funds, and showcase our community. My oldest just got back came back for summer after their first year at MSU and said they couldn't wait for the first festival. Have you been yet to one of our events? Right? There may be somebody in the room who's like, the first story makes me lean in more, Shelby. Like, I like that. But most of us are like, oh my God, that's so cool. You have a kid that like grew up in Montana or in Eastern or Western Washington, and you wanted them to be proud of where they came from. So you got involved in this festival and like it worked. They love it now. That's so cool. Tell me more, right? Like we want to start leaning into that. So the workshop that we're going to spend the rest of the day doing, and that I want you to bring back to your boards, is to help address the barrier of like, I have to get it right and I have to show what we do and I have to get everything down, and shift them more into what does this organization mean to me and how can I practice telling that story in my intersection with the work of our organization so that we can actually build some of those bridges. So we're going to take, let's take 5 minutes Because I do want you to actually do some of this, even though many of you may have it pat, but even if you do, like Emily, if you're like, I've said this 10,000 times, like, let's take some time and really dig into it and find some more of those threads and stories that like hit your heart, that maybe hit your brain or your left kneecap. I don't know. That's a bad analogy. Find some of those stories and anecdotes that we want to tell. So I'll give you 5 minutes before we do that. Emily, yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to say, like, for that last slide, that had the two stories, to that or share that this works for me as the person who is being told the story, because I cannot tell you how many times I have gone to the town of Shoto in Teton County to go see something or try to just check something out because we have friends there who just they are involved, they volunteer for the things there, and when they tell us about it from their own personal experience as a family, I'm like, oh yeah, that's awesome. I would really like to go to that. So like, I go see like the Bob Marshall Wilderness Foundation Film Festival as long as we can. They've got the summer series that I'm aware of that I'm hoping to get out to on a Thursday night. And this is just because there's a family I know, they volunteer for stuff and they're excited about it. So don't underestimate that power.
Yeah, it's strong. And guys, I just want to name how many performing arts things is Emily aware of at this stage. She probably hears stories all the time, right? Of organizations that are doing XYZ thing. So like to rise to the like prop or the front of your brain. I'll never not mix analogies. To come to the front of your brain is like, this is what's sticky for me is really powerful. Okay, so let's find your own powerful stories about the work that you do. So on your worksheet on question 5, on the second page, there's like a list of these questions. They're very similar. The left-hand side is questions about the mission. The right-hand side is questions about your connection to the mission. So let's take 5 minutes. I want you to write down. You could write it in a journal. You could type it in the worksheet. You could write it on a piece of scratch paper. I want you to answer as many as you do on the left side, on the right side, right? So don't just answer left side questions. Push yourself to make sure you're answering questions about you as well. So let's aim for at least 2 questions about you, but more if you want. Is that clear as mud? Don't just sit down and write out your mission statement is what I'm getting at. Okay, we'll take 5 minutes to do that, and then we'll come back. Okay. I'm gonna have us pause. We're gonna return to this, but I want to give I want to invite one or two folks to share a couple of their answers. I want you guys to listen with the lens of like what's making you lean in, what's not, and then I'm gonna have you return to your answers and kind of start to refine. Like what are the ones you want to tell a little bit more of? What are you leaning into? Thanks, Heather. Uh, anyone want to share one or two of the answers to their questions? Both if you're like, I think this is a good one and I just want to say it out loud, or two, if you're like, I don't know, if this is gonna land, let me practice saying it. Any brave volunteers?
I can say what I have, but it's a little different since I'm an artist versus a venue.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it, Heather. I've been kind of curious, like how this is landing for the other side of the equation.
I don't know. Yeah, so it's just sort of kind of thinking of things as coming at from a different angle. It's not solidified, but it's work in progress. So I would start saying, well, I have a great passion for the sciences. I loved astronomy when I was growing up, and I started university in astrophysics, and because I wanted to be an astronaut. And ended up with a theater arts degree. So I found a way to marry those passions in the story of Hedy Lamarr. So Hedy Lamarr was a famous Hollywood film star, and she was known as the most beautiful woman in the world. So people kind of neglected her intelligence. She was a genius, and she developed technology for torpedo guidance during World War II. And it's a communication system that we now use in cell phones and Wi-Fi, GPS, and Bluetooth. So she's the way that we're all communicating with each other, which is pretty neat. And it is a kindred spirit to me because we're both performers who love science and technology. So that with the show, it's a solo play. Who benefits from that is the audience who comes away inspired, the young women who come away empowered to follow their passions for science and technology, and everyone who can find Hedy Lamarr as a role model for intelligence, ingenuity, and invention. And I've been around the world with the show, and it's really neat to see how her story of inspiration translates to all cultures and all ages, which is a really neat gift to me as a performer. So this is speaking to a friend or somebody I've just met in the arts, hopefully. So I would say that so you're intuitive and knowledgeable about the arts. So where do you think would be really good venues with communities which could benefit from the inspiration of Hedy Lamarr's story?
Yay!
Like that.
Heather, I love a couple of things that I just want to point out specifically. One, you started with yourself and then you returned to yourself. I think it's easy. I know it's hard to tell people to get back, like make sure you stay in it, right? But you returned to yourself when you're like, that's what we have in common, which I think again, like it re-invites the listener to engage
Yeah.
with you. And then you ended with a question, which I think in that question is really specific to your need, which is great. And it was clear you knew who you were talking to, and you ended with a question to that person, which I think is excellent. Yeah, really great work.
Yeah, so that was great because I mean, I usually just tell her story a little bit. I don't always couch it in my story, and it's hard to ask for something. So yeah, it's a good lesson. And asking for money is even harder.
It sure is. It sure is. Yeah, but you made me ask, and it like I leaned in. I was like, oh my gosh, what what
I can
about
see you guys
Riverwood?
smiling.
What about
That was
that?
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you.
wonderful example. And I know you have to hop off, so I'm glad you got to practice before you needed to go, because sometimes that's the best part.
I want to hear your stories too, so I'll need to watch the recording.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. Who wants to go next? And I'll ask somebody else in the room to like pick out a thing that they really appreciated about the person's story or kind of anecdotes that you're maybe still piecing into a story?
I don't really have a story crafted yet, but I could share from my perspective.
Yeah.
So the part of how I probably will approach it, which is what we've done in the past, gathering audience members is probably a huge thing, and volunteers for what Dan, my husband, and I are trying to like broaden this whole thing. So my big excitement comes around our ability to bring these, what they're like world-class shows, I guess, to our little Swan Valley area, because we're out in the middle of the mountains of Montana, and Dan is a really talented audio tech, and he loves lighting, and we've been just given all these different lights and different things for us to use, and so he gets the biggest kick out of making these big light shows to go along with whoever's coming, and just the different moods and stuff. So we get really excited about being able to tell people that come to the show, because it's like you get to have a real show, and just in the middle of either Condon or Sealy Lake. So that's kind of the angle that I get excited about, is being able to provide this along with the performers that we have come in. It's like world-class performers, and also we have such a great team here of volunteers. I'm just so impressed by how many there are, and how much work they do. So those are kind of the components that I want to figure out how to bring into whatever final story is, I guess.
Yeah, Kathy, I'll name what made me kind of like interested in learning more as you're starting to like craft and refine, and if anyone else has anything that made them lean in. I love the thread around being able to offer something that's a real experience, a highly crafted performance in a rural community. I think is a thread that like
Yeah.
with a lot of folks in Montana. And hearing, I was like, Kathy, what made you interested in like in performances and art show,
Okay.
and Dan's like really specific interest in lighting, I think is interesting. So I think like exploring those two
And expanding on our kind of part.
yeah,
Okay.
the art
Yeah.
and your connection to it. I'm like, oh, who's Kathy? This like maestra of like experiential, full round. I do not know the performing arts language, you guys.
And
Full, really cool, like well done performances in
yeah,
that found herself in the Sealy Swan area, which is
which
rural and
is,
remote, and
I guess, part of the funny part of my story is not until I met Dan did I even get exposed. So it's only been like the last decade that I've even been exposed to that whole world. And not until we created our own little company down here in the Swan did I even get into that whole production of it. So yeah, my story is pretty recent for my ability to do things. So
which is
yeah, thank you for that. So I can pull those aspects in.
which is not which is not unexciting to have somebody that's recent. I think often we think we have to have decades and decades and decades of, but describing the first time you went to a show and like had your eyes open and be like, oh, we can start doing this. Like
Hmm.
we get to be behind the scenes, or I can support Dan in this venture is really interesting. Anyone else, anything that made you lean in or that you were curious about from Kathy's story?
Well,
Yeah.
we have a saying in our family, and I'm afraid it might not apply, but it has an interesting point. It's called, if you want good stories, somebody has to suffer.
Oh no.
Because we travel all over the world, and we come back with these stories of the flooding and the fires and the whatever, and who almost died and all of that. But it's an interesting perspective, because if you come back from a trip, for example, and everybody had a fabulous time, your audience, just of whoever you're telling, is they just zone out after we had a good time, no matter what else you could say. But if you say, oh my gosh, I got to tell you that, Mike had a heart issue and he was in such and such a hospital and
Yeah.
took weeks to get him back on his feet so he could come back. And, you know, people are just, they want to tell you to tell them the whole story and then they want to repeat it over and over again. So, how can we apply that kind of concept to telling a story that people are really going to engage in instead of just zone out? That's my question.
Emily answers in the chat. Theater texts usually have all kinds of suffering to share. Yeah, Trisha, I love that. If you want a good story, someone has to suffer. I think I would love to like have you explore that, have folks explore that. My brain goes to the suffering is interesting because there is some type of change, some type of growth, something happening there. And so maybe for organizations, we may not want to share the suffering part, but we may share the need, after some invitation into like, what is it that we do? We may share, oh my gosh, at our last event, I was on my feet for 14 hours. That's probably no time for you all in the performing arts world. I was on my feet for 20 hours, taking tickets and ushering folks in and, pitching in to be the soprano on stage. And this happened and that happened and we pulled it off, right? Like we want the arc to end and we pulled it off and we want you to be a part of it too. So I love that idea of some suffering. It does tie into fundraising methods that try to tap into the donors.
Well, yeah, when we were, over the last 2 years when we were worrying about funding, people tended to listen more acutely, more attentively. That, oh, well, we really like to have Mission Valley Live. We wanted to survive. And so I'm listening very carefully about what maybe I can do to help that. And community members started just writing checks, depending upon their background, but their financial background. But yeah, because there was a negative quality, and that maybe we're not going to be able to continue, concept. Then we had more of a listening ear, shall we say?
Yeah, the negativity bias is really strong, and it can prompt that action. I think as you are all working with your donors with your board members and volunteers, decide how you want to thread that needle. My advice would be those closest to knowing how to tell the story and what you need to ask for, to get creative with some of that. Like, okay, can somebody suffer in our story? How can we tell, some of the complicated parts of our organization? And then for those folks that you may be training to tell stories, inviting them to lean in with their personal connection first, and then be prepared to talk about those bumps or those needs when it comes up, feels like safe territory. And that negativity bias is real. Like people will lean in because they're like, oh gosh, I know this was hard. This was a hard year for me too. And then you're having a conversation, and that's the goal, right? Is to get to folks to not kind of tune out. Linda, it looks like you joined and you're off mute. I don't know if you want to say,
hello, I'm here.
Hi, welcome. Thanks for being here. We're just jumping through. I'm going to re-chat in the documents that we're using so you can follow along if you like. Thanks for being here. And then Emily shared in the chat, I think, and hope that people listen more closely and with empathy when the speaker is sharing a moment of vulnerability. Yeah. And this can apply to sharing the challenges of running a venue, etc. Yeah, certainly. If there is that space to be vulnerable and to suffer in public, people do lean in. That's a great, Trish, I'm gonna write this your family phrase down because I think it's really compelling. Okay, so I want to pause and give folks just a minute if you wrote down some answers, and just pick the ones that you're kind of gravitating towards. We just listened to two stories, got some feedback, pulled out some things that work. So let's take 2 minutes, and I want you to look back at the list of things that you started to develop, add to it, circle the ones that you're like, I really want to work on refining this more, just jot a few notes down. And then we'll kind of keep moving along into what happens after we share our story. How do we turn that story into an invitation for more? So 2 minutes to just go back, peek at your stories, see what threads you want to keep pulling. Okay, so hopefully you've kind of started to like prioritize or lean more towards what are some of the threads that make sense to share from your personal story, and then what are some important things to share about the organization side. The next piece of this is being able to end with a call to action. Heather did a really great job demonstrating like, okay, here's my story, and then here's what I'm hoping like the next call to action is. This call to action is going to look very different depending on who you're talking to and who you're inviting your board members to talk to. So if you are talking to a stranger, the call to action is probably more of a question for them, right? If you are talking to somebody that is already involved in your organization, your call to action is something like what Heather noted, which was like, hey, I know you know about arts and you know about the community. What are some venues, right? So making sure that your board members have 2 ways after they've stopped telling their story to like bridge into the rest of the conversation is important. So think about your two audiences, and then what you earlier identified as what you needed: awareness, partnership, or support. So if you need awareness, partnership, or support, you want your board members and you to have a really clear question you're able to ask. The first question, especially if it's with strangers, is probably a bridge question to continue the conversation and learn about them. Because this is a person you have no idea if they care about the arts, you have no idea where they're from, they're a stranger, right? You're not sure their connection. So the first set of questions that I think is helpful to name is just some questions to gauge their interest in your mission, in your organization, in the work that you do. And this is for board members to really write down. It's like a little scripted, right? I think your board members who are extroverts and who do a lot of like talking and wheeling and dealing in the community are like, I know how to have a conversation. You don't need to tell me. Others may not. And so being able to like help them say, okay, how do you continue a conversation once you introduced MPAC? What are some things you could learn about that person you're talking to see if it's a fit. So we're gonna brainstorm first a set of questions that might fall from your story to continue a conversation, like, do you know about the festival? How long have you been in the Valley? Have you been to one of our performances? Who's your favorite live performer you've seen lately? All of you have different mission areas and organizations and applications and needs. But the first thing is to figure out a question for a stranger. How do you keep the conversation going once you've introduced MPAC? Or I'm gonna keep using you, Emily. How do you keep the conversation going once you've told your story? And how do you keep it going in a way that allows you to develop some understanding of whether this person is somebody that you want to maybe down the road reach out to become a volunteer, to attend a concert, and maybe the easiest ask is attend a concert. So take 30 seconds, and I know it seems silly, but literally just write those questions out. It will help your board to be able to know, like, what's the question for a stranger? What's the call to action? Do we have a concert coming up that we want them to just be able to say, hey, we'll be in the pavilion on August 14th from 5 to 9. I don't, like, what is the call to action, the question, the way to continue the conversation for a stranger? So that could be an invitation, it could be a question. Take 30 seconds, jot that down, and then we'll also identify the question that we have for somebody we're talking to that may already know about the work we do. Okay, so that's the easy one. That's the, like, how do we keep this conversation going? What should I be, as a board member, interested in learning about my community members so that I can support my mission? The next is a little bit more prescriptive, and it's the call to action. So going back to that awareness, resources, partnership thing that you identified at the very first part of this session. What is the call to action? What is it that we're looking for? What do we need to communicate about our work right now? And what's the highest priority ask? If you are a staff member, having an evergreen list of these that your board members see at every board meeting, they know, they practice saying it, they practice asking it, they know exactly what the call to action is really helpful. If you are a board member or another person in the organization, ask your executive director for this list. Like, what is the highest ask? What should we be asking for? Should we just have language to invite folks to the next thing? Should we be seeking event volunteers? Should we be directing people to the website to fill out a board application? What is, if you're going to leave a conversation, maybe not with a stranger, but with somebody in the community you are targeting to ask for more support as a volunteer, as a board member, what is the really clear next ask? And sometimes we think people don't get involved because they don't want to, but often it's because we've never actually looked them in the face and asked them, could you help us, or could you support the work that we're doing? And I'm going to give an example of how we kind of avoid doing this sometimes. There are a lot of ways we avoid doing this. Sometimes we avoid doing it by just not asking. But sometimes we avoid doing it in this really nice Montana polite way where we're really kind of like, oh gosh, I know you're busy and I sure don't want to ask you, right? So we have a desperation versus invitation. So if what we're seeking are volunteers, board members, folks to support our organization, it's the difference between, hey, Sue, I know you're so busy. I hate to ask this. We have an upcoming event and we are really short staffed. I was wondering if you could come down and help us get vendors set up for an hour. We'll have pizza and beer. It won't take long. We might even finish early if we can get a few more people, or maybe even 20 minutes. I don't know. If that's all you can spare, I'm really sorry to ask. This really stinks. I'm so annoyed I have to beg people for help. Okay, close your eyes and raise your hand if you've ever asked somebody for help like that. I know I have. I've been like, gosh, I just don't want to be a burden. I'm so sorry. I should be able to run an entire 12-hour event all by myself. It's wild that I can't. I guess I have to like come crawling to help for my community. That's one way to ask. Another way to ask, for whatever it is, hey, Sue, I've been volunteering with our summer festival series for the last year, and I thought of you when we had our last meeting, since I know you are always there, front row, right when we start. You are one of our best supporters, and I've been meaning to ask if you have any interest in helping the festival run or peeking behind the scenes. I'd love to grab a coffee with you and hear about your experience or see if there are any ways you would want to help out. When's good for you? It's not hard to tell, right? Although, to Trisha's point, there is a lot of suffering in the first example. It sure doesn't make Sue feel like anything more than a warm body that you happen to bump into, that you're like not sure if you should ask. The second one is like, you're asking Sue for a reason. You've identified that Sue is somebody that already supports your work, and you could go straight to an ask of like, would you like to be a volunteer? Or you could go to a, hey, you've been here, what do you think? Right? Like, let's develop this relationship. Sue may be a really incredible board member that you can cultivate and ask down the road. She may be an incredible donor, but you don't know those things until you have that initial conversation with her. So let's take another minute. You have sort of the soft questions, which are like, okay, we want to be able to ask if people are interested, if they're in our community, where they're from, if they know of the arts, if they know of this thing, if they've been to a festival. What are some of the harder asks? Let's write down, like, what are the calls to action? And that call to action may be, hey, board members, I want you to take 2 people that you've seen at our events out to coffee next week or next month. Let's be real. Next year, in the next month, I want you to take 2 people out to coffee that you've seen at our events. Or in the next month, I want you to ask 2 people if they would be able to fill out the volunteer application form because we need ushers. Or I want you to ask 1 person, this specific person, for coffee so that you can ask them to be a board member. Whatever that, there are so many asks, right? You guys know what those are for your organization, but let's take 2 minutes and really think through, what is it that you need and what's the highest priority ask? Take 2 minutes and jot a few of those down. Okay. I'd love to hear from one more volunteer, some of the stories that are like starting to form in your mind, and some of the like clear calls to action or asks that you're starting to formulate. So one more person, I think we have time for one more quick little story, a brave soul.
I'll be a brave soul. I'm a little all over the map. so apologies in advance. But I really like what both Trish and Kathy talked about, and um, I think the adversity part of storytelling is incredibly important, and but I think you can tell those stories without without making it all about your organization's adversity. So like I'm at the Myrna Loy. We're so difficult to explain because we do films, we do live performances, we have a visual arts gallery, we have a afternoon pub, we do a ton of community events, and people can rent our space to do things that they bring in. So it really does run the gamut um, of trying to boil it down to an easy elevator pitch. But the past couple of years, some things have happened, such as the NEA funding, really helped us tell a story about how losing some funds, losing some grants from the NEA was going to not allow us to present a certain show that we had to cancel. We were always very careful to say that the organization itself was in very strong shape, but when we lose these grants, it causes our community to lose access to certain arts. So that was a compelling story, and we were able to raise some more money than usual because of those losses. Another negative story that really helped us was when the Helena public schools decided that they would cut arts from elementary schools completely. And because we have a strong education program bringing teaching artists and traveling artists into the schools, we were able to, you know, light a fire under some of our donors by saying, look, we are going to step up to help fill the gap that is being lost by the school district canceling arts in elementary schools. And that, again, was something that was definitely negative. We still look like a strong organization, but we were able to raise some money to round out and pump up our arts education program. So I would say a couple of those are great. And then also speaking of what Kathy talked about, I mean, there's just a long tradition of rural presenters bringing traveling shows into towns like Butte and Helena and Bozeman and Missoula, because back in the day, you know, in the turn of the century, like that's the only way we could bring in these artists is to set up ways to have them travel here. And it's still incredibly hard to get artists into our state because we're so remote. It's very difficult to buy plane tickets. It's very, you know, hotels are expensive. It's out of the way for a lot of these artists, you know, and I think telling that story as well about the good work that we're doing to bring in arts that just wouldn't otherwise ever be seen in this part of the country is very compelling. And it shows how hard we're working in the face of adversity. And I think people really respect that, and I think they gravitate towards organizations who are pushing through some of this adversity. So anyway, that's kind of sorry to just say a lot, but there you go.
Yeah. Benji, those are really great threads. I really appreciate how you think about sharing that adversity as an opportunity to showcase and then make a specific ask. Like we lost these NEA grants. We're moving forward anyways. I hope you can, help support this gap that we have, or with the replacing the schools. And then I do the callback to history of the unique challenges that performing arts centers in Montana face, and the strong history of that being a part of Montana values and Montana communities is like very juicy. And I think it makes folks lean in, whether they are newcomers to the state or folks who take a lot of pride in being longtime Montanans. And I think being able to, especially for your board members, for them to explore some stories around the first really impactful artist that they heard at the Myrna, or the first, and that may be 50 years ago for some of them, right? It may be last week for others, but what does that look like? Because I think it gets people to really see themselves in the story of your organization as an opportunity. Okay, we're coming into the final couple of minutes. I have just a couple more notes to think about. So as you are telling your board members to go share stories and be ambassadors and ask for things in the community, they are going to run into people, like Trish has noted, who like either just don't care or like haven't been interested. So if folks aren't interested in the stories that you're telling, what should we do? You know, we could say, too bad, give us your time and money anyways. I will force you to come to this concert. You could walk away and not look back. Or is there a secret third option? And for us, always the secret third option is community matters. Make sure your board members know that the goal isn't just raising friends and donors and potential volunteers for your specific organization. It's also an opportunity to connect people in our communities with other organizations. So often we do this workshop like in person and people hear about all their different mission areas like all across the community. So you would maybe have gotten to hear some more, although you already did hear Trish and Kathy and Benji and Heather shared. Keeping and training your board members to keep an eye out to like, who else can we connect the people we meet with? Who else is well poised to be somebody this person cares about? Because as community leaders, you are the folks doing the work across the state. So next steps, practice, practice, practice. Whatever your story is, if you're telling it the first time to a stranger or a potential new board member, then you're practicing with that person the first time, right? So make sure that even if it's with your dog or your partner or inviting your board members to practice with one another, like get them to use the words out of their mouth around the story that they want to share and the ask that they want to make. Make time at your next meeting, report back to your board or your organization, and make sure either asking or being clear as organizational leaders what's going to help you the most and what your current needs are, so that those asks are consistent and clear and people have the opportunity to say yes or no or tell me no. Okay, so we in our hour wanted to make sure we understood the fundraising cycle. We went briefly on that because that didn't come up as like key need. We spent some time thinking about how to craft compelling stories, specifically by sharing in your voice. We got a little bit of practice and refine time, and hopefully some strategies to just take this deck, take a little bit of the recordings, whatever you want, and run through this exercise with the rest of your board members or volunteers at your organization. Okay, I am going to stop sharing my screen. If you have any other questions, thoughts, needs, please feel free to reach out at any time. Thanks so much for having me. It was so nice to see all of you. And with that, I will hand it back over to you, Emma.
Thanks, Shelby.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. If you've been playing with your react button on Zoom, there's one with applause. Yeah.
Thank you, Shelby.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really
I
appreciate
think there's
that.
this one for you.
I didn't put down partnership as a need because we're already kind of exploring that, and one of the ways that we're doing that is with M&A on some of these workshops with the Connect and Learn Lab. So I'm very grateful to Shelby and everyone over at the Montana Nonprofit Association for being a part of this. And to close, I just want to point out the next workshops that we have coming up, and I think I will be able to share really quick. The next one that will be virtual is on June 18th. We're going to talk to Michael Rod from UM about his State of Mind program, where he connects the arts with mental health through theater, his theater program. He'll talk about working with providers in the community. So that's just a glimpse into like how one person is taking what we do and using it to address the health and like mental wellness needs of the community. The next one, June is sort of like our mental or health and wellness month, even though I think mental health awareness is actually this month of May. We're having these activities next month. But the next one is a session about the well-being concert model from Carnegie Hall. So we'll have somebody from Carnegie Hall, Sam Livingston, talk about that program that they launched there in New York and how it is working here in Montana already. There is a presenter in Missoula who has been doing this at the library. So this is another way to learn about how what we do can serve the broader needs of our community. We know, because we do this, that like we're not just doing art for art's sake. Art does a lot of things besides just entertain people. It really does serve people. So I think these would be some really interesting things to check out. Well-being and the arts is getting a lot of attention right now. And there's a rural health initiative in Montana. So it seems like a really great opportunity to look at what we can do to be engaged with that in the future. So yeah, I will, you'll be getting emails from me about these upcoming sessions, but thank you for being here and have a great rest of the week. Oh, Kathy, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Really quick. I see the date on this Wednesday one. Are there ways to get the recordings of these? Because I can't make, I was
Yeah.
interested in the well-being stuff.
Oh, great. Yes. Yeah, definitely. Just go ahead and sign up. So you end up in my Zoom registrations.
Okay.
And because there's definitely people who signed up for this one, and I'll send them the recording of this. So yeah, go
Okay.
ahead, sign up,
Okay,
and
great.
yeah, I'll make sure you get it. Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad you're interested. So that is it from me, except of course our upcoming conference. That's way over in October. All of you know about that. It'll be in Helena, October 16th to 18th. But yeah, that's all from me. If there's any other questions, I can take them. Otherwise, have a great rest of your hopefully very sunny week. I think we'll see if we get some thunderstorms.
Thanks, Emily.
All right. Thanks, Benji. Bye, Kathy.